Welcome. My name is Dana, and tonight I am your host of A Deeper Look. We're here with attorney Myron Watson. He is my guest tonight, and we're going to go over a few things as far as our criminal justice system and what to do if you get pulled over by a police officer. A lot of people in our community are worried about what to do in a situation when you are pulled over. We've all seen the bad press, and I'm here to tell you tonight that it's just a part of the process, and with more education, being more informed, we can make better decisions. So I'd like to introduce you to Myron Watson.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here, Dana.
Thank you. So our episode today is called Ask a Lawyer. And a lot of people have been asking me, what should I say? What should I do if I get pulled over? A lot of us don't get an attorney until we are in a situation, and by that time it's too late. So we should be better armed with the information that we need for the best outcome. So that's why I asked Myron to come on the show today. So Myron, I want you to first talk about yourself and let the audience know what inspired you to become an attorney, and what part of law are you practicing?
Well, for me, I've been in practice for more than 30 years. And in that 30 years, I've primarily handled criminal defense work. And my high school teacher inspired me to go into the field of law, but it's kind of more of an evolution process, to be very honest with you. You know, building the confidence, meeting people, and then ultimately, making that decision to volunteer at a law firm. And when I did, I said this was a proper fit for me.
Okay. And a lot of people don't know, our audience may not know, you said that you volunteered. So that took some commitment to just say volunteer. We all know volunteer means free. So you got to really want it. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, what made you just say, like, I'm going to volunteer, I'm going to do this for free, whatever it takes?
Yeah, so it's a funny story because when I first came in to volunteer, the lawyer that I saw on the first occasion could not believe that someone from East Cleveland, in the hood, wanted to come to a law firm to volunteer. And matter of fact, the lawyer told me a number of times, you're volunteering, right? There are no job vacancies.
Right.
But I was very hungry, and I really wanted to learn what lawyers do, particularly lawyers that look like me. And so I got started. It's been a wonderful ride for me.
Yes. And that is what we need. We need for people from the community to be more involved in the process. And, we all know the saying, be the change you want to see. So this man here said, I'm willing to work for free if it means I can help my community. So I'm going to ask him a few questions that I thought that maybe you guys might find important. And my first question to you is, what are the rules of engagement? Like some people, when the police is pulling up on them, they may get nervous, they're frustrated, they're not quite sure what to say. And I would say if you're getting pulled over, maybe for example, speeding, we'll just say speeding. We already know things can go wrong from there, but we're just going to keep it simple right now and just say, hey, it's a simple routine traffic stop. But if you've never been in trouble before, you may be nervous. What is the first thing you should do when the officer puts his lights on and he's trying to get you to move over and stop so that he can question you?
Well, the first thing that you ought to do is stay calm. And I know you prefaced that statement in that you're going to be a little bit nervous. But you want to be calm, because when you're calm, police officer is likewise going to be calm. So when the lights are being flashed and you are asked to pull over, obviously you want to pull over in an area in which you feel safe and away from traffic, so both yourself and the officer are comfortable. So when the officer approaches the vehicle, the first thing you want to do ultimately is put your hands on the steering wheel and keep them there. And listen for the instruction of the police officer. So when a police officer reaches your vehicle, roll your window down, be polite, address him as officer. Most officers would like to be called officer with a warm greeting. The officer is going to tell you exactly what to do next. And so if the officer asks you for your license, you provide that information. But you're only required to give your name, your date of birth, and your information if you're driving the vehicle. Okay. So with that being said, even though officers ask you for other information, the only information that you're legally required to do is to give your personal information relative to the vehicle itself and who you are.
Now, I hope all of you understood that. You don't have to give your whole life story. You don't have to say where you were going, whose party you were at, or anything like that. You heard what he said. Say it one more time for us. You only have to give what?
Your personal information, your name and your date of birth. So in that information, if you are requested from the officer, so that information identifies who you are, and the officer then knows who you are at that point. You don't have to volunteer any information. For those people who would like to go out for party a little bit, you've had a few drinks. The less you say is better, because one of which is you don't know the reason in which the officer pulled you over. So all you want to do is listen. You have a right to refuse certain requests, which I want to touch on when the officer comes to the vehicle. There's a speeding ticket, of course. The officer says, listen, keep your hands on the steering wheel. If that officer directs you to provide your license, of course, provide your license. What another thing that's been in dispute is, what do you do if the officer says, step out of the vehicle, and the officer really doesn't have a real reason to ask you to step out of the vehicle?
Yes. That goes to our next question. What is the difference between a question and a demand? That's where we're leading into. You're getting ready to give us the good stuff. So what is the difference? Some people, they get confused on when an officer is asking them a question or when an officer is giving them a command, like this is what you have to do. So can you please help us understand what that is?
That is a very good question, Dana. And the officers, what they tend to do, and what you have to realize, is that sometimes the officer wants to create the impression to you that you have to comply with certain things. But the thing, what I just told you, is if the officer asks you to step out of the vehicle, that's something that you have to do, because the officer can legally ask you to step out of the vehicle even when you haven't done anything wrong. Now, if the officer asks whether or not they want to search your car, for instance, they may make it appear that you should submit to my authority in doing that. But you have an absolute right as a citizen to refuse searches of your personal belongings. Now, sometimes what happens, unfortunately, is that some officers make a demand. You want to comply with an officer's order without giving consent. Also, if you have a cell phone, you can use that cell phone to record what is occurring. Now, what you need to do is to ask permission and tell the officer, I am recording this interaction.
Okay.
And so that's what you need to do to kind of protect yourself and put the officer on notice that, hey, listen, your conduct is being monitored right now. And you can do that with a smile and being very polite.
Okay. Right, because I don't want my viewers to think like, oh, now you're upset, you're angry. You can be calm, stay calm. We've got an expert here letting us know how to handle this. So I'm hoping you guys are really listening to this, because this is really good. We need to know these things. Go ahead, Mr. Watson.
Absolutely. So listen, I was about to tell you about situations where you may have had a couple of drinks and the officer pulls you over. Is that the less you say is better. So just provide your information that the officer requests. If he chooses to ask you questions, and getting back to what Dana said, keep your mouth shut. You have no absolute obligation to tell an officer where you're going, what's your destination, where you're coming from. So you can tell the officer politely, officer, I have a friend who's an attorney. He has advised me that I really shouldn't answer any of your questions. Or you can say, officer, I just declined to speak about this situation right now. And so that puts the ball back into the officer, and the officer probably will tell you to step out the vehicle. You can step out the vehicle. Now, if he wants to give you a sobriety test, you can ultimately refuse that sobriety test, because guess what? That is not a mandatory requirement that you have to perform a sobriety test. And so, because what happens if you don't, the officer is just stuck with the violation. If you don't say how many drinks you had, for instance, or I just came from the bar, or I just came over my friend's party where there was some drinking going on, because that's going to feed more questions. So the officer may have been just stopping you for speeding. Mm-hmm. And so give me my ticket and don't ask me any of those questions. And then I think you put yourself in a better position not to be arrested if you follow those rules. Provide your information, be compliant for those things that you have to do when an officer approaches you, and 2, do not consent to a search, and do not consent to any sobriety tests. And then you should be in a better position to walk away from it.
Great. That's great information. So as an example, a lot of people have told me, and I've experienced this myself being pulled over for a speeding ticket. An officer may ask you, may I search your vehicle? Well, that's a question. May I search your vehicle? Well, if an officer does ask that, Mr. Watson, what is the best response?
The best response is to decline. I had a personal experience, and believe it or not, even lawyers get pulled over. I was pulled over, and the officer asked me whether or not he could search my vehicle, whether or not I had any weapons in the car or any kind of contraband that he should be aware of. So those are questions. You don't have to answer those questions, and obviously by you declining to answer those questions puts you in a better position, meaning that the officer has to have reasonable cause to search your vehicle. So officers may want to create that impression that you have to comply, but you don't have to with regard to asking for permission to search your vehicle.
Thank you. So I'd like to touch base on some of our females out here that are alone driving at night. And I've had where some of the ladies have told me, well, they're afraid to pull over. They're afraid to pull over in a dark, dimly lit area, even though it is an officer. And what is the best course of action if you are a female by yourself and you're being pulled over by an officer in an area that's unfamiliar to you? What would a female do? Of course, maybe she would pull over, but what would be her next steps if she was feeling unsafe in that moment?
Right. There have been instances, folks, where police officers have done some unlawful things to women, unfortunately. And so when a woman is being stopped at night in a very dark area, with the officer activates their flashers, what that woman should do is turn on her hazard lights as she's driving to a well-lit area, so that 1, she feels safe, and 2, the officer realizes that you have every intent to pull over, but you want to find a safe area in which you want to stop, so you're not put in a very compromising situation.
Thank you so much. So I want to make sure that all of our viewers, whether you're male or female, all of these rules apply. If you're not feeling safe, of course, let that be known. Would a person even call the nearest precinct to say, I'm not feeling safe right now? Would you suggest that or no?
Well, it depends on the circumstances. Most times when a police officer pulls you over, they may have run your plate, but they don't know you personally. I think your goal is to try to de-escalate a situation. And so if the officer, say for instance, you put on your flashers and you're going at a slow speed, that should signal the officer that you are looking for a safe spot to pull over your vehicle. Now, if the officer tends to be even more aggressive, that there is some concern, continue to drive. But in that instance, you raise a very good point, Dana, because there are officers who do not do the right things. They act illegally and unlawfully, and you can call the police station that you're concerned. As a matter of fact, I've seen instances where that has occurred, where the person who was being followed by a police officer did in fact call the police station and said that they didn't feel safe and that they were pulling in the police station. But if that should be kind of a last resort, if the officer seems to be very aggressive in you seeking a safe spot.
Okay, because our number one goal is to keep people safe. We want you to be able to go home after a routine traffic stop without feeling traumatized or harassed. And we just want to arm you with the right information. So, and just to kind of wrap things up, I wanted to ask you, being a criminal, defense attorney, what do you think are good tips for us? Because the legal system seems like very complicated for the average person. A lot of us don't know our rights. And what would you suggest for us as the common person with the, with just trying to live our day-to-day lives? What should we do to kind of arm ourselves better with information? Is it Google? All we have is Google. Like, what should we do?
Well, that's a very good question, Dana. And I'm passionate about giving information and letting everyday citizens know their rights, because you can be taken advantage of when you don't know your rights. But again, there's a lot of information on the internet these days. I mean, once there was a time when I was a young pup, and that you would have to go to the library. But the internet is a good place for you to just arm yourself. What are your landlord-tenant rights, for instance? What do you do with a traffic stop? All these things, that there's some very good videos out there that you can get that information, because we're now in the mass media age,
Yes.
The internet. The information is out there, folks. I invite, viewers, and there are people like you. You're getting the word out. You're having people come in to talk about these things, so that they can better arm themselves, because it's important. It's important that a citizen knows their rights, because you can be placed in a position where you're arrested, for instance, because you didn't realize that you had certain rights and you didn't exercise them.
Exactly, because everyone that is arrested is not guilty of a crime. It just could be that a person panicked, or they didn't know what to say during a moment of stress. So we just want to let the audience know that there are people like you out here that are willing to talk to someone. So we want you to let the audience know, do you give free consultations? If a person was in need of some legal advice, would you have your lines open for a person to just be able to call you and have a discussion with you about what the issue is?
Yes, indeed, Dana. I provide free consultations, and I want to help people and giving you information, because I believe we should be of service. Yes, we do perform a professional service in which we charge people for our services, but I found that even if I can impart some good advice to someone, if I can help someone, it's still a very rewarding experience for me to do that for you.
Great, and thank you for that, because there's a lot of attorneys out here, and not too many people will talk to you without immediately telling you what their prices are. But you are from the community,
Right.
You're of the community, the community, so you get it. And people, we need more attorneys like you. So, and then also you did tell me that you were willing to give a discount off legal services. It's a 5% off your retainer fee for legal services for anyone that is watching our show this evening. So you have to use code PUSHDANA. If you say the code PUSHDANA, Mr. Watson will understand what that is, and he will recalculate your price. So I would say that is very, very good. Thank you for giving back to the community. We need that Some of us are on a limited income, and we do understand that these legal fees can get pretty high. So we'll take any kind of discounts we can when we're trying to make it work for our families. So thank you. And also, can you please let the audience know where can we find you?
Well, folks, I am located on East 12th and Lakeside at Erie View Plaza. My address is 75 Erie View Plaza, and I'm in Suite 108. My contact phone number is 216-274-1100. That's my office number. If you have an issue, you have a question, you can call me on that line. You can also Google me on my name, and then you can see my website that provides some contact information, and then you can reach out to me if you have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. If there's anyone that missed that, his office address is 75 Erie View Plaza, Suite 108, Cleveland, Ohio 44114, and the contact number for his office to reach Mr. Myron Watson is at 216-274-1100. So please, if you have any questions about your legal rights or any legal issues, please reach out to Mr. Watson. He's making himself available. He's also giving back to the community in any way he can. And we need all the help we can get. We need more people, more positive people like you, and thank you. And I want to say, I hope everyone enjoyed the show. Thank you, Mr. Watson, for being on our show today.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.